Hey guys, it's been a minute since I've done a video, so I wanted to put something out for you guys. I really appreciate everybody who's subscribed in the last couple weeks since my last video. Yesterday I streamed for a few hours and I actually set a new high rapid rating on my quest to 2200. We are just shy of 2100. I think we're currently 2096. So I wanted to do a video and show some of the games that we played, but not necessarily just edit them down and clip them. I thought I'd try a different format where I actually walk through the game after the fact, move by move, and talk about my thought process at the time and see what we could have done better. We're going to show a couple games here. One of them is a Smith-Mora gambit that the enemy's king ended up on our side of the board, like in the first 10 moves or something. And it just kind of became a crazy tactical position. So I want to show that one. The other one is just a good example of how to play a double-edged position where you have to maintain a solid defense while also maximizing your chances. So let's take a look at both of these games and see what we could have done better. Okay, so the first one, this was against a Mexican player named Pritzrak Genzi, I guess. And we opened with e4 as we always do, and we got the Sicilian. So yeah, at this point I had been winning like 4 or 5 games or tied. I just hadn't lost a game in like 7 or 8 games, so I was feeling optimistic. So I decided to go for a kind of risky but fun opening, and I went for the Smith-Mora Gambit, which is where you give away a pawn right off the bat, and there's a lot of sort of sacrificing ideas. It's really tactical, but basically you get both your bishops developed really quickly and your knight, and you castle, and then you try to attack before the black king has time to castle. Now here I kind of screwed up because there's some potential for tactics here where if you push this pawn, they have the potential to blunder right out of the gate. So if they take with the knight to try to maintain their structure, you actually take back, and when they take, here you have this tactic where you take with the bishop, you sack the bishop, and the king has to take because all this square is blocked. And when they take, they're no longer defending their queen, and you just win their queen. And if they take with the pawn, it's still better for you. You just take the queen, and if they take with the knight, then you just take the pawn there, and you are, have a lot of pressure here. You just have a great position. And if they take with the king, then you go for this attack, and yeah, they're kind of discombobulated. They have their knight on the edge of the board, and you just have a lot of development. So already showing, the strengths of this opening, but here I just developed my bishop instead. So I was probably a little bit on autopilot just because this was the variation of this line that I had most prepared for, and it kind of centers around getting these pieces out and then potentially sacrificing this knight. So our opponent just developed a little bit more. I castled again, still just following the line. And here I was kind of like realizing that I hadn't made the most of the opening because it kind of seemed like he was going to be able to castle without any complications. And that was not really what I wanted. So I put some pressure on the pawn here just to try to add some complications and stop him from castling. So now I'm attacking it with the knight, the bishop, and the queen. And he's only defending it with the queen and the bishop. And he pushes this pawn to attack my bishop instead. And here I decided to make my first sacrifice some material, and I hit him on f7 with the bishop, just to stop him from castling cleanly. And, there's sort of a tactic that I was hoping he might fall for, which is that if he takes, and then I check him here, if he does this move, which kind of seems obvious, you want to develop your bishop, that falls prey to a fork here, and the king can't defend the bishop, so he has to go back, and you just win your piece back and screw up his position. So he takes. I checked him here, but he did not go for that bishop move. He actually stepped into our camp on g6, and at this point I realized it was going to be a really exciting game. And there's a lot of things you could do here, but I had one piece hanging, and I thought, well, I could at least drag him further into my camp and hope that, some sort of checkmate might be possible. It seemed likely just because my queen was here and could jump quickly onto this side. So I went for knight h4, and that's just to drag him away from this escape square. And he only has one move, and that is h5. Now I can't go for h3 immediately because the bishop is protecting it. So here I gave a check, which was a mistake, but I wanted to force him to block his own escape square further by pushing this pawn, right? Turns out that was a blunder. Instead of that, they want me to just drop the bishop back. Let's see. No. So this is sort of the best follow-up, and it turns out that it's a tie, but the reason for that is the king is just trapped completely out in the open, and we have an open file for our rook now. The queen can still come in and give this check, so a lot of potential here. But from here, again, just seeing like, well, I'm going to be losing a piece either way, right? We have two pieces that are not defended and are being attacked. So I decided to go for this move because he couldn't take with the pawn because it's pinned by the king. So he has to take with the bishop. And then I thought, well, if I take back here, and then I could drop my bishop back potentially, and then he's just kind of walled into this corner. But he found a good move to try to just trade off queens because obviously his king is in a lot of danger and he wants to get rid of some of the attackers. Apparently the better move would have been the same idea, but queen to g8, because then my queen could not escape. I would have to have traded. But he went king to f8. So I drop back to b3, trying to maintain an attack here. And now he takes the bishop here. So I spent a lot of time in this position, and I was looking at the escape squares for the king because I could check him here now, but he could just go to g5. So if I had gone here, right, he goes here, and I just didn't see a good follow-up. Maybe it would have been okay because the idea that I had was I had this knight sitting on this side of the board that wasn't doing a lot. Maybe I could hit the rook, and then if he moves it, then I win the queen with this fork. But I thought maybe I would have a better chance of kind of hiding my motive with that line if I went for this first. So here I went for knight c7, hitting the rook, and again, just hoping that if he moves it somewhere like this, I could give him this check, and he's forced onto this square, and then we win the queen. But he decides to, give some material back, which makes sense because at this point he's up 7 points, right? So, he's not that concerned about losing a rook. So he wanted to open up a better escape square for his king, so he takes that pawn. And now I hit the queen, and I was hoping here, again, just playing for tactics, that maybe he would go queen to f7, and we would have this move where we hit the knight, and the only square to protect the queen from this revealed attack would be g6, but that's also blocked by the knight, so we would just win the queen. But he saw it, and he went queen to h6 instead. Now here, I still have my rooks are basically undeveloped, but I also see the potential here where I could take this pawn, put a pressure on the knight, and the king's still in the middle of the board, so if I can kind of like get rid of some of the material in the middle, I would still have an attack. But I decided to develop one rook first, so I went rook c1, and he starts trying to get his king to safety. And here I did take the pawn, so, I was starting to think, well, he can't move the knight because then we win the bishop, and we're still trying to keep the king trapped here. Now he just goes king to f7, which is a good move because it attacks my knight on e6, and to protect that knight, I decided to develop my other rook. So now if I move the knight, I still have a lot of pressure on the bishop, which is still pinned by the queen. And here he goes to knight e5, and I went queen b3, threatening, some revealed checks here, and he pushes this pawn, which was, obviously a mistake. At this point, I only had 45 seconds, and he had a minute, but this just drops a knight, so I took the knight. Then he hits my queen, and I sidestepped here. Now, apparently I should have gone queen d3, threatening this pawn, but I went queen a4, and he took a pawn, which I think was just like, at this point, grabbing pawns probably doesn't make the most sense, but I decided to extricate my knight so that my rook could move, and my queen is still protecting it, and here he blundered and he just gave up his queen. It happens. So I took the queen, and at this point we were winning. We had honestly been losing the rest of the game, but Then he moves his rook out. I took the pawn. He wants to trade off a rook. That's fine with me. And now I hit him with some checks. And I'm not really worried. And then he just walked away from the game. Now, he actually was up 20 seconds, and I only had 1 second. And he just, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure what happened, but he walked away, and we ended up winning on time. We had a totally winning position, but he could have flagged us. So, yeah, that was a really interesting game. And I think, it goes to show just the complications you can get from the Smith Mora gambit, but also finding moments to sacrifice material to drag the opposing king into a worse position. I just read this book, Winning Tactics by Yasser Seirawan, which is, he's a very famous writer and he's done a lot of books in this series, but it's kind of an intermediate level book, but there are some really strong exercises at the end, and it kind of had my mind thinking in that gear to, try to just find a sort of forcing sequence of moves. I don't think we found a great sequence in this game. I feel like we could have played better, but I do think it's the sort of moves that you want to be making. So yeah, I was happy with this game. Now let's switch to the other game, which was actually the last game we played of the night. Now this is the game that put us to 2096, and I walked away. I didn't try to push it and go over 2100, so we'll see in the next session whether we can get there. But this was against Oliver from the Philippines, and we were playing black. And I hadn't played the French, so this is one of my standard openings, so I decided to go for the French. And he went for the exchange variation, where EX D5. And so I take back. And the deal with the exchange variation, from what I understand, is that it's supposed to be sort of like a more drawish, even position. So if you want to play for a win as black, you kind of have to introduce some imbalances. So these were standard developing moves up till here, and then I made this move. I gave him a check, and then I pushed F5, which apparently is a mistake. Yeah, what the engine wants me to do is just step back to D7 with a queen, which seems a little strange, just doing another queen move instead of developing, but this is basically what happens. He castled, and then I castled. And then he played this move, which was really good. He pushed this pawn, and then I just had to take the knight. But I took it, and he made a minor mistake here. He should have then given me a check here before recapturing, but he just recaptured. Then I just pushed my pawn to protect the f-pawn. He develops. I develop my knight. He puts his rook on the same column as my queen, and then I was worried about this pin with the bishop, so I decided to develop my knight into the center. There's always potential that he could screw up, and if he takes with the knight, then we take here and we have a fork. So that would be nice, but he of course didn't do it. He just kind of goes out with his knight. He wants to get it onto this square, which would be good. So I was looking at that, and I thought, well, I should get my queen out from the same column as this rook, and also open up my bishop to take the knight if I need to here. And then he decides to get rid of my knight because it's pretty strong there. I take back with this one, and then he drops his queen back. And here I decide to put some pressure on, and my whole idea was just to open up his defense here with these 3 pawns. So I saw that if I push this pawn, he would have to go back with the bishop somewhere, and then I could push this pawn, and yes, he could take this, but I could take this, and then his pawn structure is ruined. So I was kind of just like making a calculated gamble that with his king exposed like that, we would have some good attacking chances. Apparently it's a blunder though. And it's a blunder because, he can just give me a check, and then if I block, he takes, and then he takes the pawn. So yeah, not my best move, but he didn't see it, so he goes there, and I push the pawn. And like we looked at before, he takes that one, I take this one. Now here, I think he actually, maybe a good move would have been just trading off the queens and negating any counterplay that I would have, but yeah, he takes the pawn, so now he does have an open column in front of his king. I develop my bishop. He decides he wants to maybe double up with his rooks, so he goes rook to e2. Don't mind my dog dreaming down there. And then I brought my knight back here, And here he wanted to trade off some material. He wanted to pin the knight, and I made a decision here that may not have been best, but I thought it looked good in these circumstances. Because his king was sort of exposed here, and he doesn't have a light squared bishop, I really wanted to keep my knight on the board so that I could potentially have some, forks with all these heavy pieces here on this side. I thought the potential was high, so I actually gave up my rook for the bishop here, and I brought my knight out here. He took it, I took back, and here I saw that I could hit him here and hope to get this fork on the follow-up, but he did have a queen move to give me a check, and I can't just move the king because he's attacking my knight, so I would have to just bring my knight back. But I thought getting him onto this square instead of this square, maybe it's good, and then I could move the knight, move the king afterwards, and then go for the same move. Because if he's on this square, then I can start hitting him with pawn moves that put pressure on, win a tempo. So I went for it, and as predicted, he gives that check. I go back. Then he goes rook here, and I move my rook here, and he pushed the pawn to protect the rook, so I guess he can move his other rook somewhere. Or just open up this row for his queen to start attacking on this side. And here I decided to move my king because I wanted to move my knight. But if I move my knight now, before I do this, let's say I got here and hit the queen, then the king would be exposed to discovered checks by the queen. He could go here, and that's a double check, and that would just be made. So yeah, I needed to move my king first, so I did. And then he brings his queen back and he triples up. And what he wants to do here is sacrifice his queen for a checkmate. So if he goes here, I have to take. Then he gives up his queen. I take back with my queen, and then his last rook goes here, and that's a mate along the back rank because I can't put anything in between. So to stop that, I went knight back to g7, adding another protector to the square and hitting the rook, and he gives up the rook. So again, this is, I think, both of us were playing some good moves just in terms of not caring about material too much, trying to play for positional advantage. So if I had taken it at this point, it would be terrible for me because he would just have like an unstoppable passed pawn, basically. Oh, apparently that's not why. Let's see. If I had taken it, they say that you should take back with the knight, hit the rook, and this is just a dominant position. I mean, yeah, I guess I'm sort of out of counterplay. Having the knight here would stop my queen from ever coming to f4, and also he has e5 protected, and this is protected by the pawn, so I could never get any sort of battery with the bishop. So I guess it makes sense. I feel like taking with the pawn would be the more natural move, but maybe this is what he wanted. So I did not take it. I pushed a pawn just to give myself some breathing room on this side if I needed to evacuate and get rid of some of these back-ranked mate ideas. And he's kind of determined to sacrifice this rook, so he takes the bishop. Fair enough, I take back, and now he brings his knight here. And I really didn't want to trade off material at this point because, yeah, he's just up a pawn, and it seemed like that would be the end of my winning chances. So I found this rook move, e8, just to pin the knight and give me time to move my knight and avoid the trade. And he unpins by moving his queen here. I mean, it's still pinned because he can't move it because I could take the rook. So at this point, I was kind of liking the way things were shaking up. I didn't feel too bad about the position. And I went knight to f5, and I think I just wanted to centralize. Maybe I want to start going for these attacks again. This f3 square was really where I wanted to get my knight, so I had sort of fantasies about getting knight h4 and then knight f3 and forking the king and the rook. But apparently I should have just pushed h5 immediately. Now that was sort of my long-term plan, was to get my knight out and then start advancing with these pawns and just try to open up his king. So here I wanted to push the g-pawn, and so I thought I would go queen to f6 and then push it, because again, he can't take with the knight, so if he takes the queen, I take it, he takes the knight, then I win the rook. But apparently I could have just done it, now without preparing it, because again, he still can't take it. This falls with check, and he can't re-attack my rook, so he'd have to step out of line, and then I can pin the knight. So I go here, which just gives him a tempo, and then he just brought his rook to e2, which I'm not really sure what he was thinking with that. And then I pushed g4 or g5. So I guess he wanted to go here. He probably went rook e2 so that he could move his knight and protect it. So I hit his queen. He steps back with the queen, and then I pushed h5 again, hoping to open up this this side. And he just takes the pawn. I thought it would be okay because then I could swing my rook over and hit his queen, and now we just have more attacking chances with an open column. And he takes the g-pawn, so he's playing pretty recklessly, and I don't want to trade off, so I just dropped my queen back, and now I'm threatening rook g8 to win the queen. Still protecting my knight, of course, and luckily he can't double attack my knight, so I thought it would be okay. And now he sidesteps with the king. And here I went knight to h4, hoping for this fork on f3. Finally get my knight to f3. I was trying this whole game, and he didn't let me do it because he had another brilliant idea, which was to sacrifice his queen. So this is, 2 games in a row where our opponent gave up their queen for no reason, but we'll take it. No, he did only have 12 seconds, so he was playing fast. But yeah, I don't know. That was a pretty bad blunder. Then he gave up his rook. I guess he just gave up at this point. Then he went for a fork, but we had a check. So yeah, that game ended up in our favor just through good clock pressure. But yeah, I think I was sort of happy with like the positional ideas of this game, even though yeah, it was pretty sharp for both of us. I think, we were not winning for a large section of it, but we put a lot of pressure on, and ultimately our opponent cracked under that pressure. So yeah, I think these were both instructive games, and I'm happy with how we played. So we only need 4 more points to hit 2100, and then after that we need 100 points to hit 2200, which is our goal. If you enjoyed watching this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and follow us on Twitch. We're also there at Condor Chess. So yeah, hope you all have a great weekend, and yeah, post more videos soon.